And let's see. Let's get all my controls in order here. Delighted to have you here. Great to see everybody. And to uh, to Jolene's point, we could have a lot of conversations about this. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of emotions there, a lot of distinctions. So we can have as many conversations as we want, but we're going to start with just this one today. And so one thing, just want to be sure everybody remembers we record and we will be posting this and no transcription apps and if you could limit your use of the notes or the whatever you call it, just so everybody can be in the conversation, that would be great. So welcome Thaisa and Brenda. I see your names there. Oh, I see your faces there now. Welcome. So I just want to give you a brief recap. So in session one, for those who weren't here, and the recordings are available and the presentation is available, we talked about so what led to Lucy and I writing this book. So that was the first conversation. And in the second one, we laid the foundation for this interpretation of emotions. It's logical and practical and relevant. And in session three, what I think that we're doing is we're reconsidering some of the traditional interpretations of key emotions. And one of the things I find in my work is that having clarity, me having clarity on how I understand the emotion is very helpful because most people show up with their interpretation of the emotion, which is just what they learned. It's what they heard, it's what they saw, it's the meaning they made of it. But they generally have what I often see as they have part of the interpretation that I think is complete, but they're often missing a piece. And that piece can be hugely valuable for them. It can help shift the way they see the emotion and the value the emotion has, etc. So, what I would like to do today, I'd like to approach this just a little bit differently. And what I'd like to do is highlight what I think are some key emotions, key in the sense that I often see them, I often hear them interpreted in a way that I don't find very useful. They often show up in coaching, of course, and in conversations that are significant to us. But I even see them showing up a lot in movies, in books, in the news. And so I think for me to have a clarity on, okay, so how do I understand this emotion is really helpful. So let me share mine. And then a couple of people sent ones they would like to talk about, which we will take a look at. And then we'll have questions and we'll go as far as we can. And I'm always open to this conversation. So anything we don't cover today, we can cover whenever you want to cover it. So envy, one of the things I find with envy is typically seen as negative, like, oh, we shouldn't feel envy. That's a bad thing. But really, if you boil it down to what it really means nothing more than I think my life would be better if I had something that person had in their life. And so I think the first thing that we always try to do with emotions is take away the positive and negative, good and bad. It's just an emotion and it's just telling me something. And so if I envy Jolene because she has a red Ferrari, if I say, oh, I really envy that, it doesn't mean I want to take it away from her. It really means just that wow, my life would be much better if I had a red Ferrari too. So that's the sense of it. And then if you think about, well, what does that have me do? What's my impulse? Well, it's often to replicate some aspect of another person's life. So I might say, yep, I really want the red Ferrari. So I might try to figure out how could I get a red Ferrari? But one interesting thing about envy is it doesn't necessarily mean I want the thing that they have. So maybe what I want is what the red Ferrari represents to me, which might be freedom or financial abundance, or it might represent something to me besides being a fast red car. So envy can have actually a lot of significant depth when we start to say, well, what is it that I'm envying about that person or their life? Then again, it's not that I want exactly the same thing, but it's pointing me somewhere. It's saying, hey, Dan, here's something that maybe you want to think about in your life. So I think what it does, what it allows us to do is recognize what we would like to have our life include, right? What would I like? And for some people, we might feel envy because somebody wrote a book. Oh, what does that mean? Well, maybe I want to write a book. Maybe that's it, but it's something like that. So for me, envy, great emotion to take out of the positive negative bucket and just to see it as, wow, this is telling me about something that I think would enrich my life. So is it the thing? Is it some idea about the thing or the person? Or is it just pointing me to something in the future that I would like to include in my life? And how great is that? If it does, then actually that helps me design my life in the future. So envy turns from being a kind of a dark, selfish emotion into an emotion that really points us to the life we like to live, if we see it in that interpretation. So envy is sometimes confused with covetousness. And I know covetousness is not a word a lot of us use, but that is the emotion where I want to take it away from the other person. I want to deprive the other person of that. So I don't want Jolene to have the red Ferrari. I want her to be without, but I want it. But in just envy, I don't want to take it away from her. I think we could both have red Ferraris, and that would be great. So, any
Hmm.
thoughts or insights about this? And just for those of you who are coming in after I started, I'm going to go through a few emotions that I find particularly important, both in coaching and in life. And then we'll get to some that you requested, and we'll get to questions and answers. Sandy, and then Marcel.
Yeah, when I was, there's, I wrote about this morning. Interesting that you brought up envy. It's just because covetous just was like, oh, I think I've really even thought about this word. So I wrote, this emotion is often considered as bad or negative. And then I just wrote that envy, greed, jealousy. And then I, I, it was more heavy when I was reading, where the terms come from. Um, and so, I just realized that is I'm truly a passionate about something in the desire versus envy, right? I desire and I'd like, or I want to drive the red Ferrari because it's, like you said, freedom and fun and abundance. But and what struck me as I'm really passionate about it. It was more about that would be fun versus convectious made me think more about passion, desire. Just it was really fun to play with that emotion
Okay.
this morning and to pronounce it. I had to go like, is it covetous? Covetous. So really
Covetousness.
great
Yeah.
emotion.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Marcel.
I think two things come up for me. One is I grew up with my parents maybe sharing it's bad to compare yourself to others. You shouldn't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And this, again, helps me reinterpret what's wrong with doing that. And then I think the second thing that I come up in is I'll hear people describe jealousy when they mean envy, and they'll
Mm,
be envious when they are mislabeling it as jealousy. So in where I'm from, I think those are two that people interchange, and they
Yep.
both see them as not helpful. So that's
Yep.
all I have.
Yep. Very good. So next week we're going to talk about clusters and pairs. So we will do more with that next week, and you'll be reading that. But yeah, it's really lovely once you have the individual articulation of emotion, then to begin to see, oh, here's other emotions that it gets confused with or collapsed with, and that again helps us see even more clearly, like, okay, so what is the difference between envy and jealousy? Because we do often use those interchangeably, and we do often use those meaning something not so good. But I think we can, if we
Yeah.
choose, we can redeem envy. We can give it a place of honor because I think envy is, well, this really helps us see what we want in our lives. And again, this is an interpretation. So not everybody, you don't have to see it this way, but you have the choice to see it this way. So shame, another one goes in the, yeah, Marie.
I was just going to say, I love the way you cast it because you cast it in a way, the interpretation is it's a very motivating emotion.
Huh?
It, it's it, at least that's how I experienced it. Like, oh, it really helps you get busy.
Yeah.
It helps you see the urgency of what you want and helps you get busy trying to attain it. So I saw it differently. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
Uh,
again, it can be, so if these are just ideas, and I always offer them to my coachees and say, well, what if we thought about envy this way? Would that make a difference? And I let them decide. So,
Yeah,
Masoom, did you
yeah.
did you have something?
yeah, yeah. So on what Marie said, I just remembered some anecdote from my life. I learned the difference between envy and jealousy when I was in ninth grade in a poem. And at that point, I just registered it in my head ki, oh, envy can be used as a navigator towards my desires. And
Uh-huh.
since then, I'm using it like that.
Uh-huh.
Since then, I if I feel envious from someone, I just look into it and I just see what I think that I want. Okay. And
Uh-huh.
it is, with God grace, I have never been jealous of someone that I should deprive them of the thing. But I feel that it can be used as a navigator in your life.
Lovely. Yeah, wonderful. So another emotion we throw into the bad emotion bucket is shame. But shame, it's really intended as an emotion to help us be able to remain part of a community. It helps us understand, oh, so I did something, but that's out of alignment with the standards or the norms of the community. And so, what we often do when we feel shame is if we recognize that, we say, whoa, I did something I shouldn't have done. So, for some people, that's speeding or breaking the law. What do I fear? Punishment from the community, like I'm going to get stopped. And so, what does it do? What it does is it allows us to recognize what we've done that's wrong from the perspective of the community. And it flags us up for us. So I had an interesting experience this weekend where, so for years in Spain, I drove with just my American license, which is not legal. So I was always a little anxious about getting stopped. Um, but it was interesting because I was driving somewhere this weekend and oh, there's the police. And you know what? I felt completely calm. Why? Because now I have my license. So I didn't feel shame like I was breaking a rule. But if we don't recognize we're breaking a rule, we don't feel shame, right? Shame is about recognizing it. And so one of the things that's interesting about shame is it can occur, like I said, because we've done something. But we can also feel shame because we are something. So this is what happens many times when people are in a minority, when people are dismissed as less important than or excluded from community, is they feel shame not because they did something wrong, but because they believe they are something wrong. And that can be worked with, but it's very helpful, I find, when I'm coaching, is to help people understand this, that it's not necessarily that you did something wrong, but that's still a belief you have about yourself that somehow you don't fit into this community. And that is a wonderful place to explore with people because then they can find belonging and peace and they can find things that they couldn't find otherwise. So again, I think shame, I don't see it as bad. I think it's highly uncomfortable. I think it can be painful, but yet that doesn't make it a bad emotion. It just means it's an emotion that carries a lot of importance for us. Melissa?
A surprising thing that this emotion did for me, I grew up in a religious cult, which had a lot of rules designed to bring shame upon its community. And um, I love your interpretation of shame in the sense of how it allows us to relate to community. But one thing it did for me was it allowed me to reevaluate what community I wanted to be a part of.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
did I want to be a part of a community that
Yeah.
caused this to happen a lot, or did I want to choose a different one?
Yeah.
Thank-
So one thing to recognize is that all of these emotions, including shame, can be used, and they can be used in some not very kind ways. And I would say that, shame is one of the big ones that's used to reinforce that this community or this culture or this family must stay intact as it is. We can't change. And so there's a lot of exclusion that comes because of shame, and shame can be used to hurt people, exclude people. So I don't want to make like shame is innocent, but that doesn't make it bad. That makes the person maybe less than ethical who's doing that. But the emotion itself is just an emotion that gives us information. But yeah, it's a lovely example. And I think most of us have had some sort of experience like that in some way. And I'm sure we could have many, many long conversations about that. But again, if we can just see it as, all right, it's an emotion. So what's it telling me? It's trying to tell me something. And if I can recognize that that's what I'm experiencing, it gives me so much insight into maybe what I could do with it instead of just being there. So regret, if we always say about foxes, how foxes are so clever. You know, I think regret's like the fox of emotions. I think regret is such a clever emotion, and I'll tell you why. We have a story in regret that my life would be better if I hadn't done X, or if I had done X, my life would be better. That's what I believe. So, if I had bought Apple when it was $1 a share, I'd be a billionaire and my life would be better. So I could feel regret about that. So my impulse is to wish. Oh, I wish I had done something different. I wish I had known. I wish I had seen it. I wish I hadn't said that. But what it does is it helps us recognize the choices that we've made, that if we were going to make them today or in the future, we would make them differently. So again, regret, what's lovely about regret, it seems like it's all about the past. But a lot of regret is about the future, if we see it this way. It's about, well, how do I want to be in the future? What decisions do I want to make? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do? And so it can be a wonderful guide to how we live our lives. But here's the tricky part. It's a trickster emotion because there's two underlying presumptions in regret. One, that I could have probably not great grammar, that I could have acted differently when I made that choice. In fact, I would argue we couldn't have because we didn't make the choice intending to be wrong. We make choices to the best of our ability, the best of the circumstances, the best of our resources. So just the presumption that I could have made a different decision, different choice, I think is a little bit shady. But here's the other one. The assumption is that life would be better. But in fact, we can't know that. We don't know if it would be better. We're just presuming it would be better. So I'm presuming my life would be better if I had bought Apple stock and I was a billionaire. Do I know that's true? No, I have no idea. I might be miserable. It's just my story of how life would be today. So really, regret, it's not about the past, it's about really the present and future as far as I'm concerned. But the other thing is I would challenge people on these 2 points is could you really have made a different choice in that circumstance, given who you were at that moment? And secondly, how do you know your life would be better? Can you prove it to me? And I think that diffuses a lot of people's sense of regret. They go, oh, yeah, no, I don't know that. And no, I probably couldn't have made a different choice. But I could say I learned something from that choice and I could use that. So for me, that's the value of regret. Again, we often think, oh, regret's bad and oh, we don't want to feel regret because we'll get stuck there. And I would say, yeah, but there's a way out. And the way out can be very, very helpful. Jolene?
I took a course on the ego about 10 years ago, and something she said was a statement you can use is, I did the best I could at that time. And that
Yeah.
shuts down your ego, which fits beautifully with what you just said. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I did what I knew at the time. I did my best. I did my best at the time, and now I see it differently. So now I would do it differently, and that's okay. That's how we learn in life. So pride's a great one because this is another one that I know I'm from the Midwest in the US. Pride not seen as a good emotion. But really, again, what does pride mean? It just means I believe I did something good. That's all. Just means I think I did something good. And I want to tell others about that. And I always think about, when my kids were little, like my 3 years old, and they would be so proud of something they did. It didn't matter. They ate with silverware, or they went to sleep without their teddy bear, or whatever. There's something, and they would just be beaming. They would be so proud because why? They did something they thought was good, and they wanted to tell me about it. But it's nothing related to arrogance, which is usually where we lump this. But it just allows us to recognize the good that we've done, but also a little bit like shame. It can also be about, I believe I am good. I'm a good human being. And so I feel pride, not just about what I do, but about who I am as a human being. So pride, it often, again, it gets confused with arrogance, which means I think I'm better than you are. But a lot of that, and particularly I know in Christianity, in biblical terms, it always says pride goeth before the fall. Well, if you do a little research about translations, what you'll find out is really it should be arrogance goeth before the fall, or hubris, which are not the same as pride. They're other emotions. But again, we've grown up with this language, we've grown up with this idea. And I have had people who really struggle to celebrate things they've achieved or done because they feel like it's wrong. They feel it's morally incorrect to feel pride. And again, I would just say it's an emotion. We all feel it at some time. What's it trying to tell us? And is it really doing something? Is it undermining my character to feel pride, or can I understand it in a different way? And one of the things I would say, a distinction, is that pride is non-comparative. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. I just feel good about me. Arrogance is comparative, and arrogance is about other people because I believe I'm better than you. And without a you, I can't feel arrogance, right? Arrogance is always me comparing myself to other people and saying I'm better. So again, when we can get these distinctions, when we can pull it apart, when we can say, oh, okay. So when somebody says pride, or when I have that that sense like, oh, yeah, I feel like I did something good, is it okay if I call it pride? Or does that create some tension in me? Humility, one of my all-time favorites. Humility, again, not always interpreted in a way that's very helpful. Um, humility is just simply saying, this is me. What you see is what you get. And again, this has been cast as putting yourself below other people. And in fact, humility itself doesn't mean that at all. It just acknowledges who we are, what we are, without pretense, without pretending. So I never claim more than I am, and I also never claim less than I am. So in true humility, if somebody says to me, Dan, you're the best coach in the world, I would say, thank you, but I think I'm a good coach, but I wouldn't put myself in that category. Why? Because I do think I'm a good coach, but I wouldn't claim that I'm the best in the world. For me, that would be pretending to be more than I am. But also on the other side, I wouldn't want to say, oh no, I'm not that good a coach, because that would be pretending I'm less than I am, because I am a pretty good coach. So when I can just claim that without being embarrassed, without hesitation, like this is me. What you see is what you get. And I'm always going to try to not pretend I'm more than I am or pretend that I'm less than I am. So, what it allows us to do is to recognize our capabilities and our skills, but without any pretension. So, what's so great about humility? It's the emotion that allows us to come into alignment with reality. Because if I think I'm so smart and intelligent, what happens? Well, usually reality comes along and gives me a lesson, teaches me a lesson that maybe I'm not quite as clever as I thought I was. But on the other hand, right, if I'm saying, oh no, I'm nothing, reality can come along and it can show me that actually I am something and I do have something to share. So I really appreciate humility as a wonderful gauge for myself about how I'm representing myself in the world. And the traditional interpretation, the two emotions that we've often confused it with are, one is servility, which is we're only here to serve, like we have no role except serving others. And the other is obsequiousness, which again, it's not a very common word. We don't hear it a lot, but it means to grovel. And probably most of us have, for instance, we've had the experience of a dog who grovels, right? They get down in the dirt and they look up at us and they look terrified. That's groveling. And servility is just somebody who does nothing but serve. They think they're born to just be a servant. So again, humility is not those things. It's about, leveling how I see myself with the reality that other people see me with. And for that, it's a wonderful lens and it can be incredibly helpful. So I think the last one I prepared is acceptance, because I think acceptance is, again, it's a wonderful emotion. It really means nothing more than it is so. When I say I accept something, I'm just saying it is so. If I say it's a cloudy day today here, I'm in acceptance, right? I'm not fighting it. I'm not resisting it in any way. So what it allows us to do is to stop resisting, is to be at peace with what is. Even if it's I'm hungry, okay, it is so. I am hungry. And then once I know that, then I can go get something to eat. But I don't have to fight against the hunger. I can satisfy my hunger. I can go look for something to eat or prepare something to eat. So again, acceptance allows us to align with reality. Like what's going on around us? What is happening in the world that maybe we've been resisting. If I could accept it, then I would no longer be resisting it. But here's the thing, many people have grown up with a belief that acceptance means that I agree with, I like, or I endorse the situation. It does not. It does not mean that. So when I say I accept it, all I mean is I'm going to stop resisting it. It doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I agree with it. It doesn't mean I endorse it. It doesn't. Those are other things. So for me, this is very helpful because in emotions, one of the first things we have to do is we have to accept that we are in this emotion, whether we like it or not. When we feel anger, the first thing we have to be able to do is say, hey, I'm angry, and accept the fact that I'm angry. And then I can move from there. But I can't do anything until I accept that it is so. And I may not understand why I'm angry. I may think there's no reason to be angry. I may think I shouldn't be angry, but I am angry. And so, anger, right? The first thing I have to do is to accept that it is so. And there's a lot of solutions to our worlds of trouble that come from acceptance because even though it looks very passive, it's not. When we declare acceptance, we free ourselves from that resistance to whatever it is that we are resisting. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. We have a couple other emotions people requested, but before I go there, so what about those? Anything you would share? Any insights? Any change in perspective from those? Brenda,
Hi. It's
hi.
interesting, the humility emotion. It's interesting what you shared about some of the common interpretations. Like my interpretation of that has usually been not bragging, like
Mhm.
knowing that you've done something good or knowing you've got accomplished something, but not being boastful. And that's
Yep.
how I always saw it. And like there was
Yeah.
always like but the way you described it is just acceptance of like both accepted like the acceptance, humility, both of those share that word reality.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like representing yourself as is.
Yep.
So it was just an interesting insight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's lots there, and I would say, as with everything with emotions, the more you can investigate this for yourself and relate it to your experiences, and okay, where does boastful fit in with that? I don't know. Need to think about that. And so I think the more you can get clarity on what these things are, then it's not that you have the right answer, but what I find is then when I hear other people say those words, I go, okay, I wonder what they believe that means. I wonder what
Mhm.
they believe pride means, because they may say pride and then they may articulate it like arrogance. And then I would go, oh, interesting, because I hear that as arrogance, not pride. Could we talk about these two and explore together? So again, it doesn't make us right because we have a clear interpretation, but it gives us a lot to work with when we begin to listen to other people or when we're trying to understand what's happening with us. So I love it. Thank you, Brenda. Yasmin.
Yeah, Dan, I will just second what Brenda also mentioned that, my interpretation of things were so different. I mean, for example, acceptance. The very fact that, it's mentioned that you don't have to like it to really accept things it's really very deep for me. It's really deep. I mean,
Yeah.
suddenly I feel that I can really accept so many things, you know.
Yeah.
I don't need to like them to accept it. And that was
No.
really a very, very deep understanding of that emotion for
Yeah.
my own self.
Yeah. Lovely. The other thing about acceptance is, at least the people I've worked with, there's often a story that I have to wait for acceptance to show up. Like one day, I hope I'll be able to accept that. And what we forget is that we can declare acceptance. We can say, I choose to accept this. And what will happen is that I'll keep coming back to the whatever I'm resisting. But if I remember that I've declared that, I'm going to accept this, I can work towards that. And then before too long, I will feel acceptance for that situation. But on the other hand, there's no shoulds in emotion. So it's not as if I should be able to accept everything, because there's lots of things in life we shouldn't accept. I mean, the way people are treated, slavery, killing. I mean, there's so many things in life that acceptance is not the emotion. But there are lots of things in life that we're resisting that we don't need to put that energy into it because we can't change it. And often it doesn't even really matter, but we still are resisting it for some reason. And when we can get clear on that and we can say, no more, I'm not resisting that anymore, I'm done. Wow, for me, that releases a lot of energy for me to use in other
Yes, exactly. It
places.
saves so much of energy, you know, that we can actually invest in something else
Yeah,
other than
yeah,
just wasting it on resisting things.
yeah.
Really, very.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. So, other thoughts about those emotions? Any insights for you, Sandy?
Yeah. With acceptance, and this goes back to your point, Jolene, and I say it often because it's so profound a shift is for right now. And acceptance was more difficult for me years ago because it just didn't seem easy to land. And now I say, I accept this for right now
Yeah,
because in 5 minutes I may not.
yeah. Very good. Thank you. Okay, well, let me just share a couple of things that people asked about. I'm going to ask the person who said it to tell us give us the context. So, betrayal. So, Marcel, you asked to talk about. Oh, you didn't tell us betrayal. I'm sorry. It wasn't you. Don't tell us about betrayal, Marcel, because it wasn't you. It was Ananya. Yeah? Am I saying it correctly, Joe? Yeah. So she asked me about betrayal and
Yes, you
trust.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, and we shared an email. But for me, it was interesting because it really flagged up for me how betrayal, our belief that somebody has broken trust with us many times, how it's related to trust and rebuilding trust and forgiveness and lots of other things. So anyway, her email, lovely. Here was Marcel's. Now I get why you were looking like a deer in the headlights, Marcel. Okay, so Marcel, apologetic.
Yeah, I picked it because when I looked at it, I really hadn't ever thought about the story, impulse, and purpose. And so I'm always curious on what's the difference between an apology and making an amends with someone. So there's different versions, I think,
Hmm.
in what I've heard.
Okay, lovely. Well, it's interesting because some of these, this book was written 10 years ago, so I might have changed my opinion about a few things in the last 10 years. And apologetic, what's interesting is in English, it doesn't sound quite right when we use it in this way. Like we say, oh, this is an emotion. But an apology means, in the way I understand it, to acknowledge something happened, but to commit to not use that against the person. So,
Mhm.
for instance, somebody I don't know, what would we say? Somebody, well, somebody betrayed my trust. Nerds with betrayal. Okay. So an apology from the other person would be, oh, I understand that that hurt you in some way, and I commit not to do it again. So if that would be the apology, but we would say that because, well, we might say that because we feel guilt. We might say that because we feel shame. We might say that based on other emotions. But to feel apologetic to me means that we want to acknowledge to the other person that we've done something that we committed not to do, or that in some sense might have harmed them. An interesting thing about an apology is we don't need evidence that it hurt them to apologize. We just have to believe it ourselves. So have you ever had that experience? You apologize to somebody and they're like, what? Like, I didn't even notice. Oh, okay. That's still legitimate. Why? Because you believe that you may have harmed them in some way and you want to acknowledge that. Amends for me would be the question of, is there something beyond that that I can do to make things right between us? So an amend for me would be a to mend, right? Just exactly like the word means, to put back together. Like is there something I could do in order to repair what's been damaged by whatever it is I did? So that's how I think about them. But I have to say, both betrayal and apologetic, I kind of put in that gray area. Are they really emotions? I don't know. I can deconstruct them. I think they're important in our conversations about emotions, but I could probably go either way on that depending on the day. So. Yeah. So let's see, what else do we have? Dispassion. I think this was yours, Marie. Didn't you send me a note about dispassion? Yeah. So take yourself off mute and tell us about dispassion.
I don't have the notes in front of me that I sent to you, but it was
No?
it what got my attention is the contrast you drew between compassion and dispatch passion.
Okay.
I think I really um, became absorbed in looking at how the words, the morphology of the words, um, and to be dispassionate. I'm curious, I guess, to some degree about is how like or unlike is dispassion with disinterest, um, or dismissal
Hmm.
of a situation. Um, yeah, I'm not. I
Okay.
wish I knew what I said to you
Okay.
because
That's
I was
okay.
full of it. I was full of it on Sunday.
We're talking about it now. Well, if you look at the root, passion, what's passion? Passion is the emotion where I want to meld with or become part of, right? So if I'm passionate about painting, if I lose myself in my painting, that would be passion. Or food, or, we have lots of experiences in life where passion defines how much a part of something we want to be. So passion is that, and dispassion, I would argue, is an emotion, but it's the emotion where we say, I know I feel passionate, I feel big emotions about this, but I'm going to set them aside for the sake of being pragmatic. So I know they're there. I'm not dismissing them. I'm not denying them. I'm saying I know that,
Mhm.
but they don't help me in this current moment. In this current moment, I need to be pragmatic to get things done. And so dispassion
Yeah.
for me is a wonderful possibility to set aside some of the emotional energy we may feel, again, for the sake of the moment and getting things done. And what I would say about disinterest is, well, I don't have any interest. I don't care. So that's another whole territory. I would say in dispassion, we do care, but we can't care right now for what's going on. And so
Mm.
some people
Hmm.
would see dispassion as being cold or icy or withdrawn. Well, it may look that way, but I would argue that when we're in dispassion, we are aware of our emotions, but we're also choosing to, let's say, dial them back for the moment, again, so that I can be
Mm,
present in the moment and take care of what's here. And I would say, think about an airline pilot landing a plane in a storm. I'm like, I want them to, terror, anxiety. I'm sure there's lots of big emotions there. I don't want
yeah,
them paying attention to those. I want them getting the plane on the ground safely. I want them to be pragmatic. And I think dispassion is what allows us to do that. Or somebody who drives an ambulance and they have to take care of some emergency medical situation. Well,
yeah,
they
yeah,
need an emotion that allows them to do that. And I would say dispassion is often that emotion. They do care, but it doesn't help the situation for them to exhibit panic, for them to experience terror or horror. What really serves them is being able to stay present with what needs to be done in this moment. Hmm?
yeah. I realize now. I just pulled up my notes. What caught my attention was how you framed it, and I loved it. That it's an emotion that helps us put our emotions in neutral.
Hmm?
And it caused me to think about it as a mighty tool, a mighty regulating tool, if we can become familiar with and friendly with dispassion,
Yeah,
that it can help us balance, as you said, the EMTs or the pilot landing a plane in a storm.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I just really saw it differently. I saw it as a powerful emotion in its own right, but also as a tool. And so it
yeah,
caused me to look at some of the other emotions that we engage with and see how they can be tools to navigate another emotion, an
yeah.
adjacent emotion.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I know,
Yeah, thank you.
Marcel and I talk about this in relationship to police because
Mm-hmm.
dispassion, like any
Mm-hmm.
other emotion, can become habitual. And if that's where we go, if that becomes our mood in life, then we have a lot of difficulty with all the other emotions. And how do we relate to people? How can we be tender with people? How can we be compassionate with people? Because it can become our mood in life or it can become a predominant emotion. And so I think it's a wonderful emotion. It's a great possibility. But again, in balance, when it serves us, because there's times when it won't serve us. And if we want
Mm,
to navigate our emotions well, then we need to take responsibility for that as well.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's
Thank you.
hear from a few of the people we haven't heard from. So I think there's a few here. And I'm just curious, though, when you read through these 60 or so emotions, did anything stand out to you that you said, oh, you know what, that one, really interesting to me? You might not have any conclusions about it. I'm just curious what really stood out to you as you read through these emotions. Jolene?
In figuring out your life purpose, I always linked enthusiasm, something greater than myself, or to be in
Okay.
service. But
Yep.
you had noted that Joseph Campbell said that bliss has a direct connection to life purpose, and that was to feel
Yep.
light and relaxed. And I would never relate that myself. So I was just curious how that links. It's a cool conversation, and I never put that in that category.
Yeah, I would just say from what I know of Joseph Campbell that what his one of the things that he was quite intent on was that we live with purpose, that we link with those things we yearn for. And what I understood in reading his work was just that bliss indicates that we're in the presence of something that we yearn for, that touches us deeply and profoundly. So I think of bliss in that way. I think of enthusiasm having more energy. Like enthusiasm energizes me because I feel like I am part of something bigger or part of a divine creation, or it comes from that root to be to be in the in touch with the gods. And I think, wow, that's oof, that says something way more than excitement and ambition. So, yeah. Yash.
Yeah. So what I have observed in the meantime is that we have been studying emotion wrong. Like we have classified emotion as negative and positive. Suppose denial. We
Yeah.
think denial is a negative emotion, but when I read about it, I thought it's not negative. It can help you in a short time in a situation of when you are not sure. It can lead you through that.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think we have been studying emotion totally wrong. We have associated someone as negative and someone as positive. But I
Yeah.
guess it's a mixed bag. Nothing is too negative, nothing is no too positive. It's in the gray
Yeah.
zone. Like
So I would say I don't think there's anything morally wrong with talking about
yeah,
emotions as positive and negative. I just don't find it very helpful because what people tend to do then is they tend to want to accumulate more of the positive and get away from the negative. And if we see that, well, but denial can be very helpful. I mean, it can help
yeah,
us adapt to difficult situations, the death of someone close to us
yeah,
slowly, step by step. Well, that's pretty helpful. And, too much generosity can be unhelpful. So again, for me, it's so much more useful if we think about them that way. But yeah, we have some very strong patterns thinking about emotions as positive and negative. And I'll tell you that with a lot of my clients, that's one of the hardest things for them to change, to break, is that automatic idea that there are positive and negative emotions. And that's an interpretation. Again, it's legitimate. It's just not one that I find very useful. So yeah, lovely. Thank you. Yasmin.
Yeah, Dan, I would just like to share that, while I was reading about these emotions, I realized that I have been so loosely using the words like confusion, commitment, frustration. I've been so loosely using these words, which was so incorrect of me. And especially, the two emotions, the difference between fear and anxiety was an
Mm,
eye opener for me. I mean,
mm,
I never knew the difference between the two. And in that explanation, you have written that, even if you could bring one person from anxiety to fear itself is a great achievement.
yeah. No.
If you could shift that emotion from anxiety to fear in itself is a great emotion. I mean, in
Yeah.
itself is a great achievement.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And one of the things I tell people who are beginning this work, they go, "Oh my gosh, 200 emotions. I can never learn all of those." And I say, you don't really need to, because remember, most people have a very limited vocabulary. So even one distinction like that can make a huge difference when somebody's struggling and doesn't understand what's happening emotionally. And I think it can be so clarifying. So it's not that you need to know everything, but the more you know, the more you have available. But I would say begin with what you have and then build it and put it to work for you. And pretty soon you start talking like I do. You just talk about emotions all the time, and people want you to just stop. Just that's enough, Dan. No more emotions. So no more. Okay, so we need to hear from Thaisa. We haven't heard from Samina. We haven't heard from Joe. We haven't heard from Elaine. So what's up with you guys? What are you thinking?
Similar to Jolene, with enthusiasm, but excitement. I'm like, oh yeah, I get excited all the time, but I didn't realize that there wasn't have it didn't have the direction
Yeah.
where enthusiasm does. And I'm like, okay, that's great because that's where I get excited with the dignity and education. So
Mhm.
with enthusiasm.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times they go together, right? We feel excited and we feel enthusiastic and we don't think too much about it. But I think if we want to focus our energy somewhere, enthusiasm will be more helpful than excitement. Yeah, no. Samina?
Yes, sir. I just want to just clarify one thing. I discussed with my husband also regarding these things. when I'm young, there is a one feeling to me with me, which has happened when I'm went to the one wedding, a Christian wedding, and I'm so excited about that wedding also. And when I reach out there, and suddenly I'm become a, like a very stressful or something. I don't know what is the emotion is going on, but I just remember he when I went to then I enjoy. This is my first wedding, Christian wedding. I want to attend it. So I'm so excited, but suddenly I'm nervous at that time, and I
Ah,
just remember my mother only. So
yeah,
I don't understand what was that and how can to deal with that emotions and it called emotion or something else that I also don't know. So just I
yeah,
want to that key what was that and how to handle it,
yeah.
this type of the emotions.
Yep, that's usually what we want next. So as soon as we know the what, we always want the how. But now now how do I deal with this? And that's perfectly normal. We do that with everything in life. And so I would just say, yeah, get clear on the distinction, and then we'll begin to talk about, okay, and what do I do with that, and how do I navigate that? But I think the excitement or nervousness, anxiety, apprehension. What's interesting about anticipation and apprehension, for instance, is they do feel very similar in the body. What's different is the story. One is, oh, I think something good's about to happen, and the other one is, oh, I think something not so good is about to happen. But really, the experience is often very similar to people, and we could have them both at the same time. But again, if we know that, oh, it's connected with my story about what's about to happen, then I get much clearer about what emotion I'm experiencing, and then I can begin to think, okay, now what do I do with this? So we'll get there, but you're on a perfect trajectory. So wonderful. All right, Joe and Thaisa, we got 2 minutes. So what have you
I,
got?
I will I will talk really quickly. First of all, sorry, Dan, I can't turn on my camera today, but I'll try to speak a little bit
Okay.
because for me, reading this chapter and during this section is being more and more clear that emotions are not good or bad. Uh, well, I thought I read about the dispassion. It was a little bit weird for me that you need to be neutral and how the emotion is neutral. But today it's more clear after this session.
Hmm.
In fact, the emotion can be neutral and it's not good or bad. We need to focus more on the purpose of the emotion and less in the history. And I think about it, it's getting clearer and clearer for me that we can't classify the emotion as good or bad.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Very good. And Joe.
Yeah, I'll just talk about what I'm taking away. I wrote a note for myself, which is on emotional regulation. That one of the principle of emotional regulation, first principle could be access emotion called acceptance. Accept what you're feeling, and that's
Hmm.
when we will come to a place
Hmm.
from where we'll make a choice.
Yeah, lovely.
So, that's
Wonderful.
principle one. And principle two is dispassion. I've not been able to form because I was paying attention to what is being said. There was so much rich content, but thank you so much. I like building these
Yeah,
interpretations while listening to all of
very
you.
good.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, so next week, chapter 4, emotional clusters. And I'll send this out to you, but pages 115 to 132. So if you'd have a look at those, and Marie, you sent me a few, we'll include those next week when we compare. But yeah, have a look, read. If you have questions, write to me. If there's things in particular you want to look into, let me know. And I hope you have a wonderful emotion-filled week and that it's incredibly enjoyable.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dan.
Thank
Bye, y'all.
you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank